time has a peculiar way of slipping away. I recall moving to the city after a rough patch in my life. The streets felt unfamiliar, and the skyline promised both opportunity and uncertainty. I sold my car, choosing a simpler lifestyle where everything was within walking distance. I splurged on a Harley, my dream bike, which became my go-to escape whenever I needed to clear my mind. Daily walks to work and quiet evenings in my apartment became my new routine. After the chaos of my last relationship, the solitude was a welcome change. The silence was refreshing. Mornings, in particular, felt like a fresh start. I would leave early, enjoying the calm while the city slowly woke up, savoring the peace before the demands of work took over. My job at a manufacturing firm provided the only real stability in my life, but small moments would remind me of how fast time was passing. As I mailed a letter one day, I realized a whole year had already gone by. It felt like time was flying as I continued my walk to work. I had chosen a condo close to the office to keep things simple, with shops and restaurants nearby, and my motorcycle always ready for a weekend escape. Today was the end of the month, so I double-checked the inventory, delayed 2 deliveries, and ensured all shop orders were completed. My boss, Ken, stopped by on his way out and asked, "What are you still doing here? You've done a great job, go home." I replied that I was just finishing up. "Seriously, take a break. The office is closed tomorrow for fumigation." "Enjoy your weekend," he said as he left. I finally headed home after 8 p.m., observing couples enjoying drinks and dinner as I made my way back to my condo alone. My condo was a renovated 2-bedroom unit with a spacious balcony overlooking a park and lake. I often took early morning walks around the lake on weekends. When I got home, I saw the blinking light on my answering machine, but didn't bother checking the messages. I just deleted them. I grabbed an open bottle of my favorite wine from the fridge, uncorked it, and took a crystal glass from the cabinet. I'd recently decided to start using the good glasses, realizing there was no point in saving them. If one broke, I had plenty of backups. With wine in hand, I turned on the TV and opened my laptop. AOL notified me of 6 new emails, 2 from eBay, 2 from my parents, 2 from my friend Nick, and 1 spam about making money from home. I decided to check them tomorrow and headed to the kitchen. I had renovated the kitchen not long after moving in, making it look like something from a gourmet magazine. A 6-burner stove, double oven, stainless steel fridge, granite countertops, and a wine cooler. When I struggled to sleep, I realized I needed physical exhaustion to rest properly, so I converted the 2nd bedroom into a home gym. Each night, I worked out intensely between 9 and 10 p.m., then took a cold shower, had a final glass of wine, and went to bed. Over the past year, I had slimmed down from 195 to 175 pounds, becoming leaner and fitter. Dinner was always simple. Since I didn't cook after getting home late, I had local meals prepped and frozen for me. Tonight's meal was steak, peppers, and rice, ready in minutes. With another glass of wine, I watched the news, but it was the same depressing cycle: violence, scandals, and mindless reality shows. I switched off the TV and headed to my workout room. I warmed up with 20 minutes on the treadmill, stretched for 15, and then dove into the main workout. 30 to 45 minutes of punching and kicking a heavy bag. Each hit felt like releasing a part of myself. As a kid, I trained in Kung Fu at a strict dojo near my home. After months of begging, my dad finally enrolled me, but it was tougher than I'd expected. The sensei didn't tolerate slacking and pushed us hard. After 2 months, I wanted to quit, but my dad insisted I finish the year he paid for. From then on, I gave it my all, and that's when I met Nick. Nick, a year older and much bigger than me, became my best friend. We trained together, holding pads for each other, though Nick often complained that my kicks were too strong. "Ease up, you don't need to kick me through the wall," Nick would say. But I was determined. After 2 months, we were allowed to spar in class, and I couldn't wait. My first sparring session was a disaster, but after 3 months of hard work, I finally won a match and never looked back, training for another 4 years before quitting. Nick only stuck with it for 2 years. By the time I earned my 2nd-degree black belt, My interest had shifted toward girls, and despite my sensei's pleas, I was done with martial arts. It was almost 11 p.m. when I finished my workout, drenched in sweat. I peeled off my clothes, tossed them in the hamper, and stepped into the shower. The cold water refreshed me, and as I looked at my red, swollen hands, I washed away the grime. I'd cut my hair short and was sporting a 10-day-old beard. After shampooing and brushing my teeth, I dried off and wiped the fogged-up mirror, seeing my reflection but wondering if I was truly alive. By 9:30 on Saturday, I hit the road. Only one other biker passed me, flashing the peace sign. Most casual riders had put their bikes away for the winter, but those of us who were more hardcore waited for the first snowfall. Needing an oil change, I headed to the dealer. Just an oil change, I told the technician. He said it would take about an hour, so I wandered around the showroom. A lime green custom chopper caught my attention. I swung a leg over and admired it. A salesman approached, and I remarked, "Sweet ride." He mentioned it had a 2008 engine with only 2,200 miles and mostly custom Harley parts. He even offered me a test ride. I probably can't afford it, I admitted. He noted that the owner was open to trades, so I told him about my 2008 Ultra. Before I knew it, I was cruising down the road on the chopper. It handled beautifully, though there was more vibration than I preferred. When I returned, the salesman asked for my thoughts. A little more vibration than I'd like, but it rides well, I said. He offered to get the owner on the phone. When I asked why he was selling, the owner explained that his wife hated the rear fender pad, so he needed something more comfortable. I laughed and replied, "I made that mistake once, never again." He mentioned he had saddlebags and a small bolt on windshield available if I was interested. 30 minutes later, the couple showed up at the dealership with the bike's accessories, and after some negotiation, we made a deal. 45 minutes and $8,000 later, I drove off on their bike, while they left with mine, a definite win-win. I scheduled an appointment for the following week to swap out the seat and add a rear shock after 100 miles. My back couldn't handle the hardtail ride any longer. When I arrived at the diner, Nick was already there, sipping on a coffee. "When did you get this beauty?" he asked, eyeing my new ride. "Yesterday. Traded my Ultra for it." "What do you think?" I replied. "Damn. It's awesome," he said, spending the next 20 minutes admiring it and wishing he had the nerve to make a similar trade. "Lisa would kill me if I brought this home," he joked. After we ordered breakfast, I told Nick about the trade, and we caught up. Business was slow for me because of the economy, but I assured him we'd still have a strong fourth quarter thanks to new distributors. Nick shared that his company had laid off nearly 10% of its workforce, and they were just trying to avoid bankruptcy. "I never thought I'd be grateful just to have a job," he admitted. "I keep telling the guys to appreciate that they're still employed." We talked about Lisa's job at the hospital, which was secure but exhausting. "Sometimes she's so worn out I have to pick her up at 3 a.m. because she's too tired to drive home," Nick said. He hesitated before mentioning that Lisa and Carol still kept in touch, and that Carol occasionally asked about me. "Don't," I said sharply. "I don't want to hear it." Nick quickly changed the subject, bringing up a rumor about me causing trouble at the dojo. "I heard you took down Sensei's new fighter," he said, laughing. "It wasn't a big deal," I replied. "He was cocky after knocking someone down in the ring, so I gave him a couple of sidekicks. Maybe I was a bit too strong, but he wasn't protecting himself." Nick laughed. "You never do anything halfway." We chatted for another hour before Nick had to leave. He invited me to dinner with Lisa's family, but I declined, citing work. "You can't hide forever," Nick teased, before taking my bike for a test ride. When he returned, wide-eyed, he said, "I need one of these. It's way faster than my wide glide." Though I wouldn't want to take a sharp corner on it, I told Nick to stay calm and not to follow my crazy lead. He headed home, and I set off for a long afternoon ride on my new green bike. Around 6:30, I stopped at a diner for a quick bite burger, onion rings, and a Dr. Pepper, while keeping an eye on my bike through the window. A group of girls pulled up, and one climbed onto my bike, which didn't sit well with me. How'd you like it if I sat in your car with my feet on the dash? I asked, catching them by surprise. Two of them jumped off, and the one on the bike asked if it was mine. Yes, and didn't anyone teach you not to mess with other people's stuff? I said. She shrugged. I didn't know. My mom and dad used to hotwire cars. She asked how it rode and how anyone could sit on the tiny back seat. It rides fine. And I don't care about the back seat since no one rides there anyway, I said, getting irritated. Now, get off my bike like I'd damage it with my 105 lbs. She shot back, adding, I wouldn't ride with you, even if you begged. She walked into the diner, and I shook my head, returning to my table. The girls sat at the counter, occasionally glancing my way. As I was paying the bill, the skinny brunette approached me. I'm giving you another chance, she said. You look like a lost puppy, and I love puppies. You can give me a ride home as an apology for being rude. Surprised, I didn't object. 5 minutes later, we were heading back into town. The faster I went, the tighter she held on. After we arrived at her place, she complained about the seat and handed me her number. Call me when you fix the seat, she said, walking to her apartment. By the way, I'm Pam. Good look but pushy, I thought, slipping her number into my pocket. The month ended well, and I secured a 5% price cut from 2 vendors, earning praise from Ken. He even hinted at a possible company car. Keep it up, and there might be a bonus this year, he said. I got a new gel-filled seat and rear shock for my bike, making it much more comfortable. I also asked the dealer about a better passenger seat and ended up buying a quick-release one for occasional use, even though it cost a fortune. Harley parts always do. I toyed with Pam's number for a week. I hadn't dated much in the past year, just 3 dates, one of which was with a female customer for business, and the other 2 went nowhere. I hated blind dates. Hello, Pam. It's Steve, I said, wondering if she'd remember me. Steve, who? She asked. Green Chopper, I replied. I thought you were a lost cause. What took you so long to call? She said. Work's been busy, and I had to get a few things done to the bike, I explained. There's a ride this Saturday. Want to join? Did you fix the seat? She asked. Let's just say it's big enough now, I joked. All right, I'm in. What time? 9:30. Dress warm, it'll be cold, highs in the 50s. Got a leather jacket and boots. I'm good. Just don't be late. I'll meet you out front, she said, hanging up before I could stumble through more small talk. It felt like I was a teenager nervously asking someone out. Saturday arrived, and I bundled up in heavy leathers and gloves. It was freezing, so I had to stop and put on a stocking cap. By the time I picked up Pam, I was 5 minutes late. You're late, she said right away. Only by 5 minutes, I replied. Late is late. Now, let me see this new seat, she said, inspecting the bike. I bolted on the seat, and we set off. Pam held on tightly, her face pressed against my back. When we reached the dealership, she rubbed her cold face. That was freezing, she said, shivering. I handed her a neoprene mask. This will help, it has a skull on it, she complained. It's for warmth, not fashion, I said, smiling. The ride started at 10, lasting 2 hours with about 30 bikes, mostly single riders. We returned to the dealership by noon, and after passing on the cold food they offered, I asked Pam, want to grab lunch? Yes, but somewhere warm, she replied. We went to Denny's, where Pam warmed her hands on the coffee mug. That was fun, though cold, she said. Do you do this often? Not as much as I used to. I used to ride to Sturgis every year, but it's been a while. I've seen pictures. Is it really that big? Bikes everywhere, and it's a non-stop party for 2 weeks. My buddy Nick and I camped out once, but now I prefer more comfort. What do you do for work? She asked. I'm a purchasing manager. How about you? I teach art and do freelance work. It doesn't pay much, but I enjoy it. Are you seeing anyone right now? Why are you applying? She teased, noticing me squirm. Relax. I had someone, but it didn't work out. Now, I'm just dating here and there. What about you? Same. Had someone special, but it ended badly. Haven't dated much in the past year. So you're basically a born-again maid, she joked. That's good. Less risk of catching anything, unlike the players who sleep with anyone. What makes you think I want to take you to bed? I asked. With a body like mine, why wouldn't you? She laughed. Now that the personal stuff's out of the way, let's see what else we have in common. For 2 days, Pam and I discussed our likes and dislikes and shared what we were comfortable with. She wasn't thrilled that I only mentioned having one bad marriage, but we got along well. Over the next 3 weekends, I got to know her better. We liked the same foods. I ran while she rollerbladed, and we agreed to disagree on my workout room and her favorite band. Want to go to a club Saturday? She asked. Some friends of mine are going, and I want you to meet them. I'm not much of a dancer, I admitted. Most guys can't dance, just fake it, Pam said with a smile. We hadn't gone beyond kissing, and when she asked me to stay over, I politely declined, saying I wasn't ready yet. Don't worry, I'll be gentle, she teased. On Saturday, Pam drove, insisting, I'm not freezing on your bike tonight. The club was packed, but we found a decent table. Pam's friends were friendly, and we were enjoying ourselves until my worst nightmare appeared. Hi, Chicken Dan sneered. Got a new girl. Did the last one dump you? He moved closer, mocking me. Pam, meet Dan, the crackhead. He's a bodybuilder whose brain's fried from steroids, I said, as his friends pulled him away. I couldn't resist adding, I hear after the gym closes, the bodybuilders blow each other. Dan snapped, flipping our table and causing a scene. Bouncers threw all of us out. Stay inside, Pam, I told her. You don't want to be involved in this. I'll call you later outside. Dan and his buddy started pushing me. Scared of me, Dan? Need help? I taunted. Dan swung wildly, missing every punch while I dodged and mocked him. When he charged, I sidestepped and kicked his knee, hearing a crack, then followed with a spin kick to his chest. As he struggled to get up, I kicked his jaw, breaking it along with his nose. One of his friends grabbed me from behind, but I stomped on his foot and headbutted him, breaking his nose. He fell, and I looked for the other guy, but he had vanished. I walked over to Dan, who was groaning on the ground. Grabbing his hair, I leaned in and whispered, Tell Tom, if I find him, it'll be worse. I dropped his head to the ground and kicked him in the groin before walking away. Then I saw Pam, her mouth agape. I told you not to come out here, I said, grabbing her arm. We need to go before the police show up. I quickly pulled her away from the scene, and we rushed to the parking garage, finding Pam's car. I opened her door, pushed her into the passenger seat, and sped off toward my condo. The drive was silent as Pam stared at me. Steve, what was that all about? She started, but I cut her off as I parked the car. Not tonight. We'll talk later, but not now, I said, raising my hand. Are you okay to drive? I'm fine, but not tonight, I interrupted, surprising her. I'll call you. I got out, glanced back to make sure she was okay, then headed into my building. Inside, I slammed the door and threw my keys against the wall. God damn it, Carol, I hate you, I screamed, ripping off my jacket and punching the wall repeatedly. The next morning, I woke up around 6 a.m., sitting on the floor of my workout room, still in my clothes and drenched in sweat. My mind was numb, but my hands throbbed, swollen, cut, and red. The ice water stung as I soaked them, alternating between heat and cold for hours to reduce the swelling. Luckily, nothing was broken, but I knew I wouldn't be hitting the heavy bag anytime soon. Later, I found some old ointment for my wrists, though there wasn't much left. At least it's Sunday, I thought. A day to rest. Unless someone comes knocking. 2 weeks later, the police finally found me. Steve Moore, one of the officers, asked at my door. Yes, I replied. There's been a formal complaint. We need you to come to the station and give a statement, the second officer said. I agreed, grabbed my jacket, and spent the next 2 hours explaining everything. Yes, I knew Dan. No, I didn't know the other two. Dan started the fight in the club, and they attacked me outside. I was defending myself. There are witnesses. Asked the people at our table and the bouncers. The officers verified my story, but one of them was still angry. You almost took one guy out, and the other will be on crutches for months. You didn't have to go that far. I was afraid for my life. How was I supposed to know they didn't have weapons? I just wanted to end it quickly, I explained. You provoked Dan into throwing the first punch, then you knocked him senseless. What did he do to deserve that? The officer asked. You wouldn't understand unless you were there. Now, if I'm not being charged, I'd like to go home. Nick picked me up afterward. They say you nearly knocked 2 guys out, he said as we left the station. Not both, just one. I don't want to talk about it. Maybe you should talk to someone about your anger, Nick suggested. I don't have anger issues. Let's drop it, I snapped. Okay, I'm just worried about you, Nick said. I know, it's been a long night. Just don't bring it up again. There were 3 more messages from Pam on my answering machine, and like before, I deleted them. But she didn't give up. For the first 3 weeks, she called 5 times a week, then dropped to 3, then 2, and finally once a week, always on Fridays. It's me, Pam. Again, her message always began. Just checking if you're free for dinner or a chat tomorrow. Oh, and starting next month, I'll be waiting on your doorstep instead of calling. Just a heads up. Good night. This girl is persistent, I muttered, deleting the message. She can't be serious, or could she? I fell back into my usual routine: work, home, eat, work out. Nick called a few times, inviting me to dinner or to catch a game, but I usually declined. I spent Thanksgiving with Nick and Lisa, sending them a list of topics we wouldn't discuss. Dinner was tense, as always, with the unspoken elephant in the room. Afterward, I thanked the officers and took a cab home. The next day, Pam left a brief message. Since I haven't heard from you, I guess I'll be camping out on your doorstep next week. Don't worry, I'm bringing a pillow. See you Friday. Would she really do that? I wondered. But as the week dragged on, I found myself eager to see her again. Pam was incredible, and even though I was hesitant to revisit the past, she wasn't taking no for an answer. By Thursday, I was restless, and by Friday, I was completely unfocused at work. I just kept watching the clock. Big day tonight, Ken asked, passing by my office. What I snapped out of my daze. Must be some girl to throw you off your game, he laughed. Get out of here, you're no good today. Have a great night, and I'll see you Monday. I left the office, grabbed my company car, and found myself speeding home, heart pounding. Calm down, she might not even show, I told myself, easing up on the gas. I parked near my building and waited in the car for over an hour, watching the entrance. I made some calls, reviewed proposals, and shivered in the cold, but there was still no sign of her. Frustrated, I decided she was just messing with me. As I walked toward my condo, I saw Pam sitting on a pillow by my door. Are you always this late? No wonder you have no life, she said, standing up. If it weren't for a kind old lady, I'd still be outside. Aren't you going to invite me in? She asked, holding a couch pillow. I smiled as I opened the door, and we stepped inside. Pam coughed. I nearly froze waiting for you. I don't think I could have lasted much longer, she said, tossing her jacket and pillow onto a chair and heading to the kitchen. Give me a second, I replied, hanging up my coat and loosening my tie. Well, I'm waiting, she said, hands on her hips, for what I asked, starting the coffee, for an apology for ignoring my calls and leaving me with a million questions. My friends were asking about the psycho I'm dating who put 2 guys in the hospital. It didn't happen exactly like that, I said. They got off easy. They were taken away on stretchers, she shot back. Could have been body bags, I replied calmly. You've got serious issues, she said, giving me a stern look. Let's talk about it over dinner. What's on the menu, she asked. Fine. What do you feel like eating, I asked. Anything but chicken. I can't eat it, after seeing how it's processed. How about beef stir-fry, seafood Alfredo, or steak and peppers, I asked, looking through the freezer. You cooked these, she asked. No, I buy them frozen from Tony's. I pick up 6 meals every Monday and heat them up when I'm too busy to cook, but with a kitchen like yours. You don't cook only when I have the time or guests, I said. Let's stick with the frozen meals tonight and discuss breakfast later, she said, finishing her coffee. I chose Alfredo, and she went with stir-fry. Pam was impressed by my wine cooler, though it only held a few bottles. I just buy what I like, I explained. During dinner, Pam finally asked, "When are you going to tell me your story, Steve?" "It's simple. I met Carol in college, we got married, had a few good years, and then it all fell apart. That's it, I've read more details in Cliff Notes," Pam said. She then shared her own story. Her mom left when she was a baby, and she lived with her grandparents until they died. Afterward, she stayed with her dad and his girlfriend until she turned 18. She got a scholarship to art school, but her dad ended up in prison for dealing pills to make ends meet. She waited tables, did portraits, and even modeled for art classes. It was art, not a strip club, she quickly clarified. Pam then recounted her short-lived marriage to Rob, who became controlling. "I got pregnant, hoping it would bring us closer, but it only made things worse. One night he accused me of cheating and pushed me down the stairs. I lost the baby, and he was arrested for trying to kill it." "Why didn't you just leave him?" I interrupted. "I was still trying to make it work." "You don't walk away when things get tough," she said. "Rob was convicted of attempted homicide, and I got a quick divorce." "So, Steve, you're not the only one with a messy past," she finished, her eyes red. We sat in silence for a couple of minutes, finishing our wine and wondering what would come next. "I need a shower before bed," Pam said, standing up. "Since I didn't bring clothes, I'll have to borrow something of yours, so get moving if you want me in bed tonight," she added with a smile. "You can bare your soul tomorrow," she teased, heading to the kitchen with our glasses. I showed her to the bathroom. "I'll grab you a toothbrush. Need anything else? You're so prepared. This will do for tonight. I'll bring my own stuff next time if there is a next time," she said, stepping into the shower. While she showered, I laid out everything she might need. I joined her, and after our steamy shower, we dried off and hurried to bed. It had been over a year since I'd been with someone. We made love, then lay silently in each other's arms for a while. "One more brownie, then let's call it a night," Pam said softly. We fell asleep together, though she drifted off first. I knew tomorrow would be tough. She'd want answers, especially after opening up to me. I wasn't sure I was ready, but I didn't want her to leave. "God damn it, Carol," I thought bitterly. Pam woke up to sunlight and found me gone. Pam spotted a note on my pillow, went for a run around the lake. "If I'm not back when you wake up, look for me from the balcony and yell, 'What is he?' Crazy," Pam muttered, wrapping herself in a blanket. She glanced outside and saw it was freezing, shaking her head at the idea of running in such weather. She sat by the balcony doors and waited. About 15 minutes later, she saw me jogging. "Hey sailor, you want to get laid?" she shouted, waving. I waved back and headed inside. "How long have you been up?" I asked. "About 20 minutes. Isn't it cold out?" she replied. "Not if you keep moving." "Running gives me a morning high," I said, heading to the bathroom. "Give me a minute to shower, then I'll make you breakfast." As I stepped into the shower, Pam followed. "You washed my back, so now it's my turn," she said with a smile. Between the shower and some extra fun, breakfast got delayed by over an hour. After 2 showers and plenty of play, we finally got dressed. "Coffee, tea, or hot chocolate?" I asked. "Coffee sounds perfect," Pam replied. "You've got your choice: pancakes, waffles, omelette, or fruit-filled crepes." "But we've only got sausage links," I said. "Sausage links only." "Off with his head," Pam laughed. "Let's have crepes today and waffles tomorrow." "Confident, aren't you?" I teased. "Confident in myself, yes, in you. Not so sure," she replied playfully. "How about breakfast, then questions?" "Or we could just stay in bed all day," I suggested. "Let's do both," she smiled. As we ate, I wondered how to tell my story without sounding foolish. "That was delicious. I didn't realize how hungry I was," Pam said, rubbing her belly. "Any coffee left?" she asked. "Just enough for you," I replied, clearing the dishes. "So, do we start here or in bed?" Pam asked with a grin. "I'd prefer unclothed in bed, but you'd probably distract me. Let's start here, then move to the bedroom." "I want the whole story. We've got the weekend, so don't leave anything out," she said. "All right. What do you want to know?" I asked. "How long have you had such a hot temper?" Pam pressed. "I don't have one," I said defensively. "But what about that night at the club?" she continued. "That was a long time coming. Dan deserved what he got. and I'm just glad I stopped. When I did, I replied. Now I'm confused. Just tell me what I need to know, Pam said, curling up on the couch. All right, I began, sitting across from her. Carol and I met at a party Nick and Lisa threw. Neither of us was looking for anything serious, but since Nick and Lisa were getting married, Carol and I kept bumping into each other and eventually started dating. She was a party girl, and I often had to pull her out of trouble. She flirted with the wrong guys, which caused issues, so I stopped calling her after 2 weeks. Carol confronted me, asking, "You don't like me anymore." "Carol, if you're with me, you're with me only. I'm tired of you flirting with everyone," I told her. "So are we exclusive now?" she asked. "Yeah, I guess so," I replied. From then on, we were a couple. At Nick and Lisa's wedding, Carol said ours would be more laid back. 2 years later, we got married, set up a home, and life was good. We both had decent jobs and enjoyed ourselves, but in our 3rd year, things changed. One night, Carol asked if I had any fantasies I wanted to act on. For her birthday, she wanted a fantasy night where she'd be tied to the bed and pleased until she yelled enough. I got into it and set everything up: silk ties, chocolate, whipped cream. On her birthday, I prepared the room with candles and told her the safe word was pepper for hours. I pleased her until she finally yelled pepper. It was a fun, passionate night. "What did you get for your birthday?" Pam asked. For her birthday, I bought her a sexy outfit, and we played a role-play game. I sent her to a bar, watched guys try to pick her up, and then walked in pretending to be her pimp. Afterward, we had dinner at a nice restaurant and went home for a great night. The following year, for her birthday, I was supposed to be her slave for the night. It didn't go well. We went to a dance club, and I spent the evening fetching drinks while guys hit on her. That's when I met Dan and his buddy Tim. They danced with Carol and flirted with her all night. Dan even handed me $20 and said, "Get us another round." Boy, Carol backed him up, saying, "You promised." Just go get the drink. When I returned, Dan and Carol were grinding on the dance floor. Furious, I told her it was time to leave, but Dan shouted, "Why don't you wait in the car?" Boy, I grabbed Carol and said pepper, the safe word. She finally agreed to leave but kissed both guys on the cheek before we went. The ride home was silent. When we got back, Carol said, "That was fun." I was humiliated. "You danced like a cheap hooker, letting those guys paw at you," I said angrily. "What if I had done the same thing with some girl while you sat there waiting for your turn? It was just a joke." "A fantasy," Carol insisted, but I was too upset to listen. "You went too far," I told her, pouring drink after drink. When she tried to touch me, I pushed her away. "Don't touch me until you get the stink of those guys off you." Carol went to bed, and I passed out on the couch. The next morning, I woke up hungover with an empty bottle of Jack Daniels. For the next 2 days, we barely spoke until she finally blew up at dinner. "Get over it, Steve." I pushed it too far, but no one got hurt, and we're still married. "What's the big deal?" she shouted. "Fine, for my birthday, I want a menage a trois with 2 other women." I said. "You mean me and another woman?" she asked. "No, me and 2 other women, and you just get to watch," I replied. "Okay, if that's what you want," she said. I packed my bags and told her, "I'll call and tell you where to send the rest of my stuff. I'm not into sharing or swinging." Carol, I left, hearing her yell something as I walked out. I ended up at a Holiday Inn bar, where Nick found me. "Want me to tell her I found you?" he asked. "Not yet. We have different ideas about what being unfaithful means, and I'm questioning my marriage," I said, downing another beer. "She's crying at our place." Nick said, "She's only upset because I won't go along with her. She was practically dry humping those guys while they called me boy, and she doesn't think she did anything wrong," I said. Nick joked, "Well, I guess you won't be trying that fantasy again," but quickly realized it wasn't funny. "Sorry, bad joke. But you're not really leaving her, are you? Not this time, but if it happens again, I'm done," I replied, and after a few days, I went back home, and the make-up sex was amazing. Things were fine until my next birthday. "Ready for that menage a trois?" Carol teased. "I found 2 hot babes. It was a joke," I said, feeling frustrated. She then suggested we have a couple's massage from another pair instead. The massage began with us lying side by side on the bed, close enough to touch but not kiss. The woman was gorgeous, and the guy looked like a Greek god, both barely clothed and covered in oil. We weren't allowed to touch them. As I felt the woman's hands on my back, I suddenly realized the guy was massaging Carol. That's when I stopped the session. Carol looked disappointed, clearly having enjoyed it. I paid the couple and sent them on their way. When I got back, Carol smiled and said, "That was interesting. Didn't enjoy your massage. I didn't speak to her for the rest of the day." The next morning at breakfast, I asked, "Was getting massaged by a guy one of your fantasies? I thought it was my birthday gift," she replied. We both had fun, and no harm was done looking back. I regret not speaking up then. My silence made her think I was okay with it. I told her we should stop with the fantasies, but by then the damage was already done. She believed she could do whatever she wanted without any repercussions. After talking for 2 hours, I was thirsty, so I grabbed a glass of juice and sat next to Pam. Things got out of control, I admitted. Pam shrugged. "We've all done things in the heat of the moment. It's just human nature." We discussed dinner options and ended up at an Italian restaurant. Over wine, Pam said, "Doesn't sound like the worst marriage ever. What she did later was much worse." "I'll tell you after dinner," I replied. As our food arrived, we continued talking on the cold walk home. I explained. Carol wouldn't tell me her plans for her next birthday. She just kept saying it would be a night to remember. By Friday, I still had no clue what she had planned. After dinner, she led me to the bedroom, undressed me, and tied me up with handcuffs and leather straps. It was supposed to be fun, but then I heard the doorbell ring. My heart started racing, terrified it might be Nick and Lisa. But it wasn't them. Ham and I reached my condo, and she protested when I stopped. "Finish the story," she said, settling on the couch. "I need a drink first," I replied, grabbing 2 Coronas. "I've never told anyone about that night, and it's going to put me in a bad mood." "You don't have to, if you're not ready," Pam reassured me. "No, I need to get this out. I just don't want to push you away again." "I'm not going anywhere," Pam said. "All right, but be warned," I replied. I was on the bed when I heard voices. I should have used the safe word, Pepper, but my curiosity took over. I heard them go into the spare bedroom, and after waiting 10 to 15 minutes, I started calling Carol's name, getting louder each time until I was shouting. 15 seconds later, my world crumbled. Dan walked in, completely naked, and taped my mouth shut. "That'll keep you quiet while Tim and I enjoy ourselves," he sneered. "You really are a cuck. She's too much for you. But don't worry. We'll take good care of her." He tossed the handcuff keys on the dresser, taunting me, then left. I screamed into the tape and struggled against the restraints, hearing Carol scream in the distance. I fought for what seemed like hours until I physically couldn't move anymore. Dan eventually returned, slapping my face. "I just had wild sex with your wife, and she loved every second of it. We should do this again," he mocked. After he left, I thrashed around until the bed broke. I lay there, drained and unable to move. I heard the front door close and the shower running. I felt completely numb. Eventually, Carol came in, screaming when she saw me. She freed me, babbling apologies about how Dan was supposed to release me. My hands and feet were bloody, but all I could see were the hickeys covering her body. I lost control and started shouting, causing chaos in the bedroom as I angrily tossed things around. I stormed into the guest room, saw the unmade bed, and started destroying everything in sight. Then I felt an electric shock. After the third jolt, everything went black. I woke up in a hospital room, restrained. A nurse sat nearby and explained that I was in Memorial Hospital, brought in the night before. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Tired and my hands hurt," I replied. "You lost a lot of skin, but you'll be okay," she said before leaving. The doctor came in next. "You're looking better today." "I'll remove the restraints," he said. "You'll have scars, but they'll fade over time. You're free to go, but you'll need pain medication and ointment for your hands." The police said no charges were filed. Also, "You don't have any clothes, that's fine. I'll call a friend," I assured him. Nick brought me some clothes and asked, What happened last night? Carol came to our place crying, saying everything went wrong. What happened to your hands, Nick? Listen carefully. Don't ever mention last night or Carol again, I warned him. If you do, you'll never see me again. Now, please just drive me home. No more talking. We drove the rest of the way in silence. I knew Nick had plenty of questions, but I wasn't in the mood to answer them. I thanked him as I got out and went into my building. Without a key, I headed to the manager's apartment and asked him to let me in. Mr. Kelly opened the door, and we stepped into chaos. Furniture and clothes were strewn everywhere. Steve, I'm not evicting you, but you need to find a new place within 90 days. I'm sorry, he said before leaving. That night, I crashed on the couch, still in my clothes. The next morning, I surveyed the damage. The bedroom furniture was wrecked, and Carol's clothes were scattered all over. I made coffee and found my phone buried under a pile of stuff. I had 3 missed calls from Carol. I turned off the phone and disconnected all the others, except for the kitchen one, which had an answering machine. As I finished my second cup of coffee, the phone rang, and the answering machine picked up. Steve, I know you're there. Please call me. What happened wasn't supposed to go down like that. I'm scared to come home. I love you, Carol's voice pleaded. Ignoring it, I decided to take a shower, wrapping my wrists to protect the wounds. Afterward, I made a shopping list and went out. I picked up my prescriptions, medical supplies for my wrists and ankles, some lawn bags, and withdrew the maximum allowed from both our accounts at the ATM. I also cancelled my Sprint account and opened a new one with a locked number. My last stop was the liquor store to grab some Coronas. When I got back home, there were more messages too from Carol and one from Lisa. I deleted Carol's and listened to Lisa's message, where she said she'd be coming by at 7 to pick up some things for Carol. Realizing I had 2 hours to prepare, I filled 12 bags with Carol's clothes, shoes, and other belongings. After taking a break with a couple of beers, I finished by peeing in each bag. When Lisa and Nick arrived, Lisa asked, "What's all this?" "It's all of Carol's stuff," I replied. "I just came for a few outfits," Lisa said. "I've been asked to move out, and I'm not taking Carol with me. She can come get the rest later," I told her. "Shouldn't you two talk it over?" Lisa suggested. "Not a chance," I responded. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got beers to finish and need to get some sleep, unless Carol tries to get me arrested again." They left with what they could carry, and I flipped the blood-stained mattress and crashed for the night. The next morning, I woke up at 9 in pain. I took some painkillers with the last of my beer and went back to sleep. That's how I spent the weekend, drifting in and out of sleep. I called my boss, requested a week off, and explained I'd been in an accident. He was understanding and gave me the time I needed, as the wreckage of my marriage seemed reason enough. On Monday, I finished what I'd started. I withdrew half the money from our joint savings and checking accounts, opened a new account in my name, and signed paperwork to remove myself from our shared accounts, though it would take 7 days to process. I cancelled our joint credit cards, paid off half of those with balances, and updated my HR records to remove Carol as the beneficiary of my 401k and life insurance. It was a productive day. For the rest of the week, I searched for a new place to live since my time was limited. After weeks of me ignoring her calls, Carol started emailing me constantly. I didn't know why she didn't just stop by, but maybe she remembered our last confrontation. Finally, I replied to one of her emails. "Our marriage is over. Carol, please leave me alone. I hope your night with Dan and Tim was worth it." To my surprise, she responded, "I'm so sorry. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Dan told me he let you go and that you left. I wasn't thinking clearly. We smoked a few joints. I'll give you some space. I really love and miss you." I finished my beer and said to Pam, "Now you know my night from hell. I still hate her more than you can imagine, so that's why you went after Dan." "What happened to Tim?" Pam asked. "I hired a private detective a month ago. I know where he works, lives, and his gym schedule. After dealing with Dan, I'm not sure where he is now," I replied, trying to calm down. "Steve, why bother with Tim? Dan was the main problem, and he's out of the picture, Pam said. I need to close this chapter, starting with Tim and ending with Carol, I said angrily. You're scaring me. You're thinking about hurting Carol, are you? After what you did to Dan, you'll end up in jail. I won't hurt her physically. Physical pain fades. She deserves much more. She will pay, I said, pacing furiously. Steve, let it go. You're not divorced yet, but you're practically free. Just sign the papers and move on, Pam pleaded. I can't let her off that easily. She has to pay for what she did, I shouted, my eyes wild. Steve, I don't like this side of you. You don't forgive, you just want revenge. If you go through with this, we're done, Pam said, grabbing her coat. Don't call me after this is over. Goodbye, Pam, I muttered as she left. 2 weeks later, I confronted Tim as he opened his apartment door. We need to talk, I said, pushing him inside. Look, it was all Dan, he babbled. Carol set everything up. We were supposed to let you join in. I didn't know you were still tied up until we were leaving. I'm sorry, man. Please just leave me alone. My birthday is in 2 weeks. I want you gone by then. If you're still here, I'll make sure you never have sex again. Got it, Tim nodded, terrified. 2 weeks, I said, leaving. 1 down, 1 to go. For $8,000, I got my birthday present. The day before, I received an email. It's all set for 9:30 a.m. I went to work on Wednesday in the best mood I'd had in a long time. Everyone wished me a happy birthday, and there was even a cake. Later, my boss took me out for dinner, and I didn't get home until almost 8 p.m. My answering machine was blinking with 25 messages, but I deleted them all. I grabbed a Corona and waited for what I knew was coming. Just before 9, there was loud pounding on my door. I set down my beer, took a deep breath, and answered it. Asshole, Carol screamed as Nick held her back. Good evening, street hooker. How have you been? I responded calmly. How could you send that video to my parents and friends? She cried, starting to sob. What video? Maybe if you describe it, I'll know which one you mean, I replied sarcastically. God damn you, Steve. Do you hate me that much that you'd ruin my life like this? She yelled, angry and tearful. Oh, you mean the sex tape, I said mockingly. The one labeled Carol Moore is a street hooker and cheats on her husband? I not only saw it, I lived it. I rolled up my sleeves, showing my scars. See these? They're a daily reminder of what you did. Should I hate you? Absolutely. You destroyed our marriage. Did you know, Carol, at first I thought Dan and Tim were hurting you. I would have cut off my hands to save you. That's how much I loved you. But you set it all up with them, and even let them tape it. She sobbed harder as I continued. Your parents, our friends, they all blamed me for the breakup. Maybe now, after watching the tape, they'll understand. Or maybe they won't. I don't care anymore. I said I was sorry. I tried to talk to you, but you wouldn't listen, she cried. Sorry, I sneered. You mean sorry I planned my fantasy of getting screwed by other men while tying up my husband? I should have left you that night. Steve, you went too far, Nick interrupted, looking serious. Have you watched the tape? I asked him. No, I haven't, he replied. That's because I didn't send it to you and Lisa. I didn't want to drag you into it, but if you think I'm wrong, watch the tape. Then imagine it was Lisa, and I spent over 3 hours trying to save her, thinking she was in danger. Then tell me what you'd do. I stared at him, making sure he understood. Carol kept sobbing, and I turned back to her. If anything on that tape isn't true, I'll send a retraction. If not, it is what it is. And just to part on a good note, I've got a little gift for you, I said, handing her a manila envelope with the divorce papers signed, notarized, and delivered. If you don't mind, I've got things to do. The sex was nice, but the rest of the marriage was garbage. I shut the door and leaned against it, knowing it was finally over. I had hired a hacker to send the tape to her parents and all the friends who had taken her side. I could have sent it to her work, her parents' church, or even the world, but I didn't. I just posted it on 2 adult sites, figuring the income would cover the hacker fee. Carol threatened court, but nothing came of it. The tape had been routed through overseas sites, making it untraceable. 3 weeks later, I got a short email from her parents with sorry. We never knew. Some old friends tried to apologize, but I didn't respond. The tape spread quickly, and Carol became infamous. She quit her job and moved away within a month. People at work saw the tape but never said anything. They saw me as the victim. 2 months later, Nick reached out. He'd seen the tape and admitted he might have done the same thing, but to keep peace in his family, we couldn't hang out for a while. I understood. I had lost Pam and Nick, at least temporarily. I started dating again about 4 months after that night. I ran into Pam at a downtown club. She was with friends, but eventually came over. "Hi, Steve. How are you?" she asked. "Never better," I replied. "I heard what happened and saw part of the tape online," she said. "You had no idea when you judged me." I cut her off. "You thought I was just some crazy guy trying to ruin his ex-wife's life. Well, you made your choice." "Maybe we could talk sometime," she suggested. "Pam, I really liked you, but it wasn't enough. You've got too much baggage for me now," I said bluntly. "My date is coming back." I nodded toward a redhead approaching. "Take care, Pam." "I hope you find someone who meets your high standards," I said, as I kissed Tammy when she reached our table. "Not introducing me?" Tammy asked. "Tammy, this is Pam. We used to date," I said. "Well, Pam, he's mine now." "Good guys are hard to find," Tammy said firmly. "Nice to meet you," Pam said stiffly as Tammy suggested we leave. I hugged Pam and whispered, "I was really falling for you. It took me weeks to get over you. Too bad you didn't understand." I kissed her on the cheek and walked out with Tammy. Pam watched us leave and muttered, "Damn, if only."